Well, the sun is out and the heat is ramping up, and it's perfect time for us to go to the beach. But one thing you want to make sure you always have with you is sunscreen. I'm joined with toxicity expert Tonya Harris. And Tonya, not all sunscreens are made equal.
Right. There's actually two kinds of sunscreens, actually. There's one called mineral sunscreen and one is a chemical sunscreen. So the chemical sunscreen is one we're used to using, and that protects with things like avobenzone and oxybenzone and octocrylene, among some other ingredients.
Things I can't pronounce and have no idea what they do.
Yeah, exactly. So they're the ones that protect, but they also have health effects, and they're linked to hormone disruption and skin irritation and allergic reactions. And some of the chemicals in them can actually degrade in sunlight, which we definitely don't want. So they actually add more chemicals back in to help that, but we don't want those extra chemicals.
And so are most sunscreens a chemical sunscreen or an alternative?
Yes, that's a great question. A majority of them are chemical sunscreens. So what I recommend is a mineral sunscreen, and those are the ones when you look on the back of the bottle, you'll see that it's labeled with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide as the active ingredients.
Oh, okay.
And those are actually physical blockers. So what they do is when the sun's rays hit your body or hit your skin, they scatter the sunlight. So they go on a little bit thicker. It is a little bit more, I will say, I cannot think of the word, but it's a little harder to rub in.
Right.
So it's not as convenient, but it does protect better. And actually the sun rays come in two ultraviolet wavelengths. So it's UVA, which are actually the more harmful wavelengths that actually penetrate deeper into the skin, causing damage that we can't see. So that's anything from premature wrinkling to even skin cancer down the road. And then there's UVB rays, which hit the surface of the skin and cause sunburn, but they're the more beneficial rays because that's where our body produces vitamin D. So most sunscreens only protect against those UVB rays, which are more beneficial, and they don't go deeper into the skin with the UVA, whereas the mineral blockers do actually protect against the
Okay, so they cover both, but they're harder to rub in. So if I'm just, say I'm a little vain and I don't want the white streaks on my face or whatever, but the alternative is using a chemical sunscreen. What do they do? I mean, what does a hormone disruptor actually do? Why is it bad?
Oh, that's a great question. So they're known as endocrine disruptors. And the endocrine system is where in our body that our hormones are produced. And there's hormones for everything. It's not just when we're moody. There's hormones for sleep and hunger and even blood pressure and just about every function of the body. So a hormone disruptor or an endocrine disruptor is a man-made chemical that comes in and either blocks or mimics our hormones or causes an over or underproduction. So we can see then if they're controlling just about every function of our body, we don't want something in there that's going to interrupt those processes. But this also doesn't necessarily leave like the big white streaks like it does when we think of, lifeguards back in the day.
Right.
The white streak.
Yeah.
It does go in a little whiter, but it does fade over time, I will say.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, so for a lazy person like me at the beach, I see you've got a spray sunscreen there. Is this a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
I give it a thumbs down.
Okay.
And that's because of the inhalation risks. We don't want to be inhaling these chemicals. So
interesting.
Yeah, and so when we're spraying, and I'll be the first to say, oh my gosh, I did use this on my kids when they were little, just because it is more convenient.
Right.
But now knowing what I know, it's also way too easy to apply too little or to miss spots, because one of the things we're also doing with sunscreen is not applying enough.
Is there a base SPF that we should all be using?
I think that's a personal preference. I would say at least 15 to 30, and we don't always need one over SPF 50. So if we're using that SPF 100, that's not necessarily better either, because they've done some testing, and one thing Procter & Gamble did, I believe, was test an SPF product over SPF 100, and it came back from testing results between an SPF 37 and SPF 75 for that same SPF 100 product.
Oh, so it's overkill for unnecessarily.
Yeah, the higher you go, the more risk you have of not calculating it correctly. So
if people want to find out more about all the information that you've got, where can they find you?
Sure, my website is slightlygreener.com.
Slightlygreener.com. All right, perfect. You've heard it here. You can go to slightlygreener.com if you want to hear more about sunscreen and its toxicity.